Whoa, I've made 50 of these things? Let's celebrate by doing absolutely nothing.
Your mistake was to underestimate.
Have you ever wanted to play as a witch that fights angels using demons that she summons with her hair and also wields guns with all four of her limbs? Well, Bayonetta was the answer to your oddly specific fantasy. It was a game that I ended up really liking after I actually sat down and played it, but it just didn't click with me and I couldn't put my finger on why. I love the over-the-top action, the amazing one-liners, the fluid as hell combat, Rodon's voice. But after a second playthrough, it was pretty easy to see the flaws. You got a rank penalty for using items despite how stingy the game was with giving you health pickups, which meant that I was spending most of my halos on health items instead of upgrades and techniques. Climax finishers needed a ton of button mashing to get the max halo bonus. Challenges to increase your health and magic were too hard and too well hidden for a first time player. Magic felt next to useless, and while the levels had really great variety, there was too much dumb stuff. Like having to avoid cars driving at breakneck speeds while also paying attention to dodging attacks, and this motorcycle section was really long and felt unnecessary. Like, why is Route 666 even here? Or this mini-boss, where you have to use this cannon that was never used before or after. The missile section was kinda cool though, just please stop making the screen spin. It was starting to make me feel sick, and I don't usually get motion sickness. Oh, and this is the kind of game where if you don't press a button prompt that only appears for half a second, you instantly die. Thanks. The story was oddly convoluted too, despite how simple it is when you actually think about it. That's not to say I hated the first Bayonetta or anything, it just had plenty of flaws that I somehow didn't notice when I reviewed it a few years ago. Don't watch that video, seriously. But with a sequel that fixed these issues, this could be a game that I really enjoyed. Platinum must have thought this too, so they started development on a second game. Until Sega said, actually, don't. The first game didn't sell so well at the time, and Sega were keeping to safe franchises, so Platinum needed a new publisher for Bayonetta 2. And this search went so poorly that the game was almost cancelled. But then Nintendo of all companies were like, we got you. So yeah, a sequel to a 360 game ended up being a Wii U exclusive. And they even ported the first game to Wii U since it wasn't available on a Nintendo system at the time. For free. Yeah, the Wii U version came with 2 discs and 2 games, and it was still $60. A lot of people were pissed about this announcement, but considering the game wouldn't have even been made if not for Nintendo, this is fine in my book. It's not like they threw money at them the last minute for a timed exclusive or something. But the game bombed in sales, even by Wii U standards, so they ported it to Switch and people stopped complaining about the Nintendo exclusive thing. Man, there really was no saving the Wii U, was there? Even a lot of hardcore Bayonetta fans didn't want to touch this thing to play the sequel, and yet no one complained when it was put on Switch instead. I really feel bad for this console. They did it kind of weird with the Switch version though. Bayonetta 1 was digital only, but Bayonetta 2 comes with a code to download the first game, and it's just printed on the reversible cover. That's so bizarre. It's usually on like a voucher or something. At least it's an efficient use of paper. But unlike when I reviewed the first game, I've actually played Bayonetta 2 before. In full. It even ended up being one of my favorite games on the system. I had such a great time with it. But I didn't review it back then because I didn't do marathons or anything at the time, so I just played it without recording it. I don't know, maybe I just wanted to play Golden Sun or something. I haven't touched it since then, so I'm curious how good the game is on a second playthrough, especially after just having replayed the first game. Seriously, how did I not complain about those issues? Did I even play the game? Again, don't watch that video, but do watch this one, or not. Whatever, I don't know where I'm going with this. Bayonetta 2 starts off with exposition yet again. This time about Aesir, who's this world's god or something. There's 3 realms of light, darkness, and chaos, and our world just so happens to be chaos. The eyes of the world were split between light and darkness, and now humans have free will, the Eye Inheritors have the power of creation, yada yada yada. Baldur, the villain from the first game and the last Lumen Sage, dies, as you probably would have assumed after the end of the first game. Also, the Eye of Light is gone, so that's maybe bad. But now, it's Christmas Eve. It's an oddly normal day. Enzo's buying last-minute presents as he's complaining about stuff to Bayonetta, as usual. John shows up and talks to Bayonetta for a bit. One of the planes from the local air show almost crashes into the store Enzo's in before Bayonetta kicks it up into the air and angels show up. You know, the usual. Oh, and Rodon was there too. Beautiful. People were really worried that Nintendo was going to make them censor or tone down the game, but it's probably even more explicit this time. Man, how times have changed. Remember when Nintendo said in the 90s that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo console? Well, what about that time they took out a light swear in Metroid Prime 3? A T-rated game, by the way. But nowadays, they've published this game that throws around the S and F words like they're going out of style.
Shit. The fucking wing bastard. Fucking shit. Shit. Bastard. Fucking
Remember folks, this is indeed a Nintendo game. It's glorious.
I fucking believe!
Even with a fully first-party game like Xenoblade 2, they don't mind letting the villain call Rex a little shit within the first 2-3 hours. Nintendo just lets developers seemingly do whatever they want nowadays, which is pretty great. Also, Night Trap is on Switch now, and that's hilarious. But back to Bayonetta, you can almost immediately tell just how much better the gameplay feels over the first. It's really hard to describe. The combat and controls just feel snappier, I guess? I don't know. Even dodging out of the way to activate Witch Time, the combat just feels better overall. Whenever there's a button mashing prompt, it takes way less presses to get the max Halo bonus. That was annoying in the first game. It almost felt like I was going to break my controller I was pressing the button so much, and I still just barely didn't get the full bonus. Magic isn't next to useless anymore either. When you have a full meter, you can do a torture attack to insta-kill an enemy just like before, but now you can instead use Umbran Climax, which lets you temporarily use the more powerful attacks you had during big boss fights in the first game. The prologue does a really good job of teaching you the game's flow. Beat the crap out of everything, and be sure to dodge their counterattacks. The more attacks you dodge, the more often you can generate magic and activate Witch Time to slow down time and dish out even more damage. Once your magic's full, use Umbran Climax to do even more damage. Look, this is a hack and slash, there's a lot of fighting. Bayonetta sounds really brain dead, but there's a certain skill set to learn. You have to learn enemy patterns and when to dodge attacks to get the most amount of Witch Time possible. This game rewards you for playing well, which makes the game a lot more engaging than just mindlessly pressing buttons. And dude, are you even seeing all this action? This is just the prologue, man! Most games save this level of epicness and non-stop action for their finales, but Bayonetta 2 just throws you right into it to show you what it's really about. It can feel a little misleading because the game slows down quite a bit after this, but it was needed to have this much action right off the bat in my opinion. The first game needed some kind of hook to keep you interested, and it didn't. The prologue of that game was in a graveyard with generic enemies and not much happening until the gameplay actually starts. You didn't even have health yet. It was pretty much just a tutorial stage that's over in like 2 seconds. The game didn't really open up until Chapter 2, where the chapter was structured like the rest of the game is. While Bayo 2's prologue is still basically a tutorial, all this action doesn't make it feel like one, and that makes you invested quicker. All the story isn't thrown at you at once this time either. John helps out Bayonetta midway through the— oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they're friends now. Why? Gonna be honest, I don't really know. I think John was mind controlled or something, and they were friends pre-mind control, so she's switched sides, I guess. Whatever, not important. Because what is important is that during all this fighting, one of Bayonetta's summons goes rogue and drags John's soul down to hell. Also, Bayonetta can have wings now for some reason. So after kicking its ass, Bayonetta's got a day to go down to hell and rescue John's soul before she's gone forever. No pressure. And yes, most of this game takes place on Christmas. So if we're going by Die Hard rules, that makes Bayonetta 2 a Christmas game. I mean, we're going down to hell to fight demons. Sounds pretty Christian to me. Aside from all the angels you kill in between. Like seriously, with all the angel killing and ahem, I'm amazed this game never had any dumb controversies. At least any well-known dumb controversies. There could be one I don't know about. Along the way, Bayonetta meets this Yugimoto wannabe named Loki that has amnesia and can turn into a scroll for some reason. This kid can't remember anything other than knowing he has to get to the top of Fimmelventer, but since Bayonetta is heading that way anyway to enter the real gates of hell, not the bar/shop Rodin owns, and since Loki can somehow see Bayo while in Purgatorio, the alternate dimension she fights angels in, they decided to just go climb the mountain together. To make things easier, she puts Squirrel Loki inside her— I don't know, use your imagination. Oh, and Luca was there too.
Would you expect anything less from the marvelous, magnificent, magnanimous Luca?
The game does tone it down a notch afterwards, but it felt kind of needed. When you have so much jam-packed action in the tutorial, it makes you automatically assume that the whole game is like this. So having those quiet moments with nothing really happening is a good contrast. When you're not fighting, you're generally exploring, because despite how linear the game is, you get a ton of rewards for taking your time and looking through every nook and cranny. Exploring in the first game was kind of annoying at first. Your walk speed is really slow. It's designed more around fighting than actually moving around an area. A few chapters in, you get the ability to unlimited dash in the form of being able to turn into a panther somehow. I don't know, magic. Maybe I shouldn't question it. But anyway, for the first few chapters, the slow walk speed almost subconsciously made me not want to explore. And by the time I wasn't so slow, I was already used to not taking my time. But you already have your dash in Bayo 2, and they throw you right into this explorable area that shows you just how helpful it is to look around your surroundings. There's plenty of chests that give you consumables, halos for buying stuff from Radon's shop, along with heart pieces that increase your max health, and rune pearls that increase your max magic. But most health and magic upgrades are found in the form of Muspelheim challenges. Those short challenges like beat these enemies within the time limit, or don't take any damage, or the floor is lava. You know, stuff like that. They were in the first game, but they're not nearly as difficult or hidden as well this time, because back then, to a first time player at least, these challenges were hidden so well that buying health upgrades from the shop felt more reliable than actually going out of my way for heart pieces. And I needed to do 4 of them to actually increase my health, or just 2 to increase my near useless magic meter. But in Bayo 2, these challenges are much more doable. While they sometimes take you a few tries, I had a lot more fun taking them down this time. They were just nice little challenges that test your skill and reward you with more health and magic. Those challenges where you can only damage enemies during witch time are stupid though. I probably just suck, but damn, these are a pain in the ass. But they didn't come up very often at least. There's plenty of other quality of life stuff aside from just better game design in general. It was pretty annoying how there was no way to save those temporary weapons some enemies drop. These things do way too much damage to waste them on the small guys that go down easily anyway. But now you have to use your gun instead of a punch or kick to use enemy weapons. While you temporarily lose access to standalone guns, it's not like you use them that often anyway. Enemy weapons make Breath of the Wild weapons look like Nokia phones, so being able to save them for enemies that'll actually make a difference on is a huge help. Bayonetta 2 is a much easier game than the first actually, but that's a good thing because the game feels more fair. There's no instant deaths because I missed a button prompt, no weird gimmicky levels or sections. The game feels better designed overall. I never felt like there was something I couldn't handle, and when I felt that I needed to heal, I felt more comfortable doing so because they no longer penalize your rank for it. At least on normal, not sure about hard. But despite being more comfortable about healing and using consumables, I often felt that I didn't need to. Not because the game's so easy you don't need healing items, but because I wanted to push myself. How far can I get without healing? I can just dodge attacks instead, I don't need it. The combat is so fluid and engaging that I actually wanted to get better at it. And when I was getting silver and gold ranks at the end of most chapters, it set off those good brain chemicals that made it more satisfying to finish levels. Because I don't care about ranks or anything, but let me tell you, it feels so much better when I'm consistently getting good ranks as opposed to stone ones like in the first game. Hell, I think I only died once in Bayonetta 2, and that was only because of this dumb insta-kill move. In the first game, I was dying constantly, and barely dying in this game made it feel like I was getting better and could just focus on playing the game. And if you want a better challenge, Horde mode is unlocked right from the start this time. That was really dumb before. You shouldn't force players to play an easier difficulty to unlock a harder difficulty that some players might be more comfortable with. And since I wasn't spending all my money on healing, I could actually afford to get more moves that I ended up not really using. But look, I can breakdance now. This was totally worth it. And even though I was still able to buy all the shop's health upgrades, it felt like I'd earned that from not needing to heal as much. Even if you need more healing, you can instead make them with these materials you find lying around and avoid spending halos that way. It's great. The levels do have less variety, though. You're not really going to different places and are mainly running around the same environments. Things are shaken up occasionally. Sometimes you're underwater, which is an odd inclusion. It's not that they're bad or anything, but you can't dash while you're underwater and you move slower like basically every underwater section. The combat feels about the same, but exploring is slower. These sections don't last long at least, and you only have to go through 1 or 2 before you get the ability to turn into a snake underwater, which fixes the main issue. I really don't know why I didn't just have this ability from the beginning. There was more variety near the end of the game at least. Since you're in hell trying to figure out how the heck to get John's soul back. There's even one point where Radon shows up to help you out and he's just as strong as he was in the first game as a super boss. Like, this dude just one-shots mini bosses. You don't even need to do anything in this section. It's hilarious. But while there's not as much variety as before, the levels are much more consistently good. There was hardly any point in the game where I wasn't enjoying myself. This jet port near the end was kinda weird, but it was still enjoyable. The bosses are way better too. They're actually fun to fight now. None of them are ever annoying, like that one dragon thing you fought in the Coliseum. That one was weird. My favorite fights in the game were with this new Lumen Sage dude because of how even it feels. It felt like I could actually lose if I wasn't paying attention to his attacks, but it never felt like he had the upper hand either. Not to mention whatever the hell was happening in the background in these fights. If I had any real complaint about this game, I guess is that they only really play the one battle theme for the most part. Don't get me wrong, Tomorrow's Mine catches my speakers on fire whenever it plays, but the first game alternated between two battle themes. The theme of Bayonetta, which I barely remember, and a cover of Fly Me to the Moon. There was a cover of Moon River already in the game, so I don't know why they didn't just play Moon River occasionally. You know, just to add some variety. And to make it more annoying, this cover is not only amazing, but it only plays like 3 times, 2 of which were at the end of the game, and 1 of which was at the beginning. So if my only real complaint is that they play a track that I don't get tired of too much, you've done damn good. The story is kinda weird though.
Spoilers.
However, I will say the Bayonetta 2 story is much more cohesive than last time, and it's much easier to follow, but it very easily could have veered into being more confusing. Everything is pretty straightforward until we get to Fimmelventer. There's another Lumen Sage that's still alive somehow, and wow, he sure does look familiar, but we'll get to him in a bit. The weirdness starts when Loki gets attacked by a vision of himself, but wearing blue clothes? What? And then some angel calls Loki the Sovereign One and sends them flying away from the mountain using a sword that would make Sephiroth jealous. After fighting it, they're back at square one and are really far away from this stupid mountain. And Loki apparently knows a shortcut to hell, okay. They run into this Lumen Sage dude again, who somehow has the destroyed Eye of Light and end up in Magical Triangle Land, which just so happens to be the gates of hell.
You know, love, you're probably the only person on the planet who says, go to hell, and means take me there.
Literally right outside the gates, the Lumen Sage Man and Rhombus Man show up to crash the party. Oh yeah, this dude only showed up in cutscenes before this. He wants the eyes of the world so he can be a god or something, and he looks so goddamn stupid. I love it. Also, he's trying to kill Loki for reasons they explain later. Bayonetta and Loki almost lose to these guys somehow, so they figured they would literally have a better chance in hell and escape only to get separated. Then you get to the bowels of hell and remember why you're here to begin with. So after beating this demon shake-up, John's soul is freed. I really love how Bayonetta goes from thinking that John is actually dead to their usual back and forth banter within the span of 30 seconds. It's oddly heartwarming. Oh yeah, Loki's probably almost dead. Let's go help him now. Before kicking the Sage's ass again, it turns out that the Lumen Sage is actually Baldur. Aren't you supposed to be dead? That doesn't make much sense. What also doesn't make much sense at this point in time is that Loki suddenly has superpowers and sends Bayo and Baldur back to Vigrid during the witch hunts. Bayonetta's mom, Rosa, even fights alongside her during this part, and she's just as much of a badass as Bayo is. Damn, badassery really runs in the family, doesn't it? Oddly, Rosa seems to recognize her, and she just accepts it like, whatever, I've seen weirder. So yeah, the whole time travel thing explains how Baldur is still alive. Not that it's anything new, time travel was in the last game, seeing as he needed a younger version of Bayonetta. It almost feels like they're intentionally making the story needlessly over the top, which is something I'm much more into. I just think that the first game took itself a notch too seriously. The second game actually knows how ridiculous everything is and just rolls with it. Also, the Umbra Witches have mech suits? And they lost? What? Oh, so that's where the clock tower came from. And just when you think you found Loki, he's wearing blue clothes, which means he's the evil one from earlier. So yeah, the good Loki escaped the future, being the present, and the evil one was here the whole time. Meanwhile, at least I think, meanwhile, time travel is weird. Luca finds Loki almost passed out in the present, and he remembers everything. The world is going to end if he doesn't get to Fimmelventer, so Luca reluctantly agrees to carry him there. Meanwhile, evil Loki kills Rosa just as Bayo and Baldur show up, and they somehow figure out how to return to the present. Also, past Bayonetta finds her mom just after they leave, and yes, the sequel to Bayonetta also acts as a prequel to it, while also being an actual sequel. I don't know, man, time travel is weird. Baldur and Etta are now in the present Vigrid, but conveniently, John is able to fly in with a jet plane for them to stand on top of. You know, as opposed to being in the cockpit. Who am I to even question their logic at this point?
Have you lost your sanity?
Sanity is a requirement for our kind.
Loki gets in a spout with Rhombus Man, and Baldur and Etta show up only for everyone but Bayonetta to get their asses kicked. Also, Rhombus Man is basically a god at this point, and is unfortunately not named Rhombus Man, and is instead named Aesir, who is Loki's evil twin 500 years later. Loki is apparently able to freely control the eyes of the world, which Aesir steals. Also, he has the Eye of Light now, so that's bad. Bayonetta almost kicks his ass, but he steals the Eye of Darkness from her anyway and gains an even more ridiculous outfit. The audacity of this bitch, though. Calling Bayonetta some mere mortal like she can't kill a god, even though she already did in the last game. Some god this dude is. Do you not know the events that transpired last time? Oh yeah, the gameplay. This is the final boss. I didn't know that on my first playthrough, because the first game's final chapter was labeled Epilogue, even though it probably should have been called Finale, but whatever, you get my point. I assume there would be another chapter after this because it doesn't get a fancy label, something I wouldn't really have a problem with, but the final boss just feels so standard. We got this big, epic final fight against the God of Creation last time, and yeah, it's the God of Chaos this time, but nothing in particular really stands out to me. Aside from the weird-ass background and occasional death ray, it just leaves you wanting more, and it's not an overly satisfying fight to me. But while this oddly standard fight is happening, Loki's just like, screw this, and uses his Aesir powers to erase the eyes of the world from existence, which means that the world will either be destroyed, like it was going to anyway, or it'll make his own path. Considering there's a third game maybe being made, we all know how that turned out. It's pretty cool seeing Bayonetta summoning Jubileus and kicking this dude into John's dragon thing. I forget the name of it, alright? And he's still not dead? Son of a bitch. He attempts to escape to the spirit realm, but Baldur sacrifices himself to seal Aesir inside of him, turning him into the evil Baldur of the first game.
Ceresa, just one time. Call me Daddy.
Daddy.
Thank you, Ceresa. My dear, sweet child.
I genuinely can't tell if this scene was supposed to be dead serious and they remembered what kind of game it was at the last second, or this was just an excuse to make Bayonetta say daddy. I'm not sure which possibility I prefer. But regardless, Baldur is poisoned by the spirit of evil, leading into Bayonetta, the first one, despite this game taking place after. Like, you can play these games in either order and it still makes sense. It's so bizarre, yet so cool? Is that the word I'm looking for? Describing crazy is difficult. Afterwards, Loki uses his god powers to take a break by disappearing into dust for a while, and everything goes back to normal. Well, Bayonetta's normal. And that's pretty much it. At least things actually make sense this time. Well, it did make sense last time, but on a first playthrough, you might get confused by stuff like I did. I don't know if I just got used to the bonkers story or if I didn't pay attention or something, but the story is a step up from last time. I just love the chemistry Bayonetta and Loki have. It's like an aunt and nephew bickering or something. You don't see that very often. Baldur feels like an actual character this time too. In the first game, he just felt like random one-note villain at the end of the game, but he feels like he has actual motivations and goes against who he was working with when he finds out what he's actually trying to do. And to find out that this Baldur sacrificed himself for the overall good of mankind is actually pretty tragic. Bayonetta didn't know her father prior to his corruption either. I'm sure she's glad she got to spend some time with him, but man, that would hurt. They were only on the same side for like one chapter before he sacrificed himself. That's just sad, man. And Luca is still Luca, because really, it's not that deep, just better than last time. The game as a whole was way better than last time. I definitely enjoyed the first game more after a second playthrough, but I was on board with this one ever since my first real playthrough. The action gameplay is just so tight, and being constantly rewarded for good gameplay is super satisfying. Even more so when good ranks feel actually attainable on normal, because the gameplay is really about pushing yourself and seeing how far you can go, and by doing better, you're rewarded with better upgrades and more money. Man, I really want to play the game on hard next time, just to see how that difficulty plays. Normal is a really fair difficulty, but I feel like hard could push me even further than normal ever could, because trust me, there will be a next time. From what I hear from Platinum games, they're all about replaying to see how much better you can get at them. Now, I don't have the time or motivation to play it over and over, but with all the rankings and secrets, this game's designed to be replayable, and replayable it is. I didn't even get all the weapons or did all the challenges, which is all the more reason to come back to it. It's a bit shorter than I remember too. I finished it in 7 hours, but considering how good those 7 hours were, I don't mind one bit. My next playthrough probably won't be soon because there's a bajillion other games I want to play right now, but it's gonna happen. And probably before the third game comes out, if it's even coming out. Seriously guys, it was teased almost 3 years ago. Just give us something. I'll even take concept art at this point. This has been Flame Guy, and I don't know what's up next in Bayonetta 3, but I sure am looking forward to it. Take care, and I'll see you all next mission.